Hey everybody, this is Kodak here, and this is going to be a bit of a short one this time because if there's any subject that I've been asked to cover a lot, it's the concept of balancing your game, and I hate to say it, I don't really think it's possible. I mean, what benefit is a video about resource cards to a game that uses an action point system? How helpful is a video about card advantage to a game where you fully redraw your hand every turn? What use is a video about life points to a game that uses victory points? That's kind of what I've been trying to avoid in these videos. If I talk too much about specific mechanics on their own, as opposed to examples of wider concepts, I worry that I might inadvertently pigeonhole somebody's game idea because I think I'm telling them they're doing things the wrong way. I mean, my series is called The 7 Deadly Sins. That kinda comes with the territory. Now, I did single out a couple of designs, life decking and board gaming. Life decking because it's an anti-fun feature that wastes cards and got solved by the shield system ages ago, and board gaming because using cards as pawns, especially when tokens and other cards are involved, is a frustrating experience in person. Feel free to check the various Sin videos themselves to see the perils of these mechanics. Otherwise, I don't want to make it feel like anything is off limits, or that you have to ascribe to how other games do things aside from, like, clear formatting and ease of play features. Because balance is an incredibly relative topic. I've played good games that have stable progression, and I've played good games that are really swingy. So the idea of game balance is basically impossible to speak about objectively. For an example of how crazy this can get, let's take a look at just one ludicrously simple card effect. Draw 2 cards. You play the card, its sole effect is you draw 2 more cards, and you keep going. Now, all of the members of the big 3 have a card with this effect, so the real question is, how powerful is it? Starting with Magic the Gathering, the ability to draw 2 cards is a fairly middle-of-the-road effect valued at a mere 3 mana, the definition of average. In fact, Magic has a lot of cards that are known as cycle cards that have the effect of drawing a replacement card as part of their effect. In Pokemon, this card is hideously weak. In a game with as many hand refills and deck searches as Pokemon has, a card that merely lets you draw 2 is absolutely pathetic, to the point that its upgraded version that lets you draw 3 is still considered one of the game's weakest cards. In Yu-Gi-Oh!, this card is more powerful and feared than Blue Eyes White Dragon, hence its permanent home on the ban list. These days you have to bend over backwards, shift to the very earth, and forge a dark bargain with a foul spirit in order to get an effect as seemingly benign as drawing 2 cards! See? 3 radically different outcomes from the exact same effect. This is what I mean when I say that talking about balance objectively is basically impossible. It's why, when talking about mechanics, I prefer to go on a case-by-case basis, looking at games individually and seeing how the mechanics come together in each one. As for general advice, it's the same kind of advice you get for any kind of creative endeavor that has a competitive element. Test your cards and mechanics often, surround yourself with people who will give you honest feedback, and make sure that you occasionally reach outside of your group, getting somebody who's not involved in the testing to try out your game to make sure that it's easy for new players to understand. Otherwise, if your game requires dedicated resource cards that get shuffled into the main deck, maybe increase draw power a bit to keep games from dragging? That's about it. On the other hand, some things that seem like obvious advice might not be. For example, the idea that you should not give cards numerical advantages, like a card with the same costs but better stats and abilities. This seems like obvious advice, but that very imbalance might be a factor in the game's design. See also Grizzly Bears, a card which was slightly above curve on purpose to emphasize green's creature dominance. And on the subject of Grizzly Bears, advice on power creep can also sometimes be suspect. If a type of card in your game is just not getting used at all, maybe bumping the power curve a bit is needed to bring them back online. This was the case with creatures for a long time in Magic. It was a joke in the Magic community for the longest time that creatures were actually the worst cards in the game until they got their fairly recent power bump. I remember a time when a 10/10 for 5 mana with no downsides was unthinkable. Instead, you got a 10/10 for 7 mana that died in 2 turns, and you liked it. Magic cards have also gone the other way, with certain cards getting newer versions that cost more or do less, while the original versions are allowed to rotate out through set rotation. Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon have done the same thing with designs like retrains and supporter conversions. So it turns out keeping your card game balanced can be a balancing act. I'll show myself out. And that's really all I can say on balance. There's really no way of knowing how a given mechanic or piece of design collides with other pieces of design until it happens. So, for the future, I will probably be sticking to examining things on a case-by-case basis, unless I notice a common thread across a number of games. I'd rather stick to design language that matters to the most number of games possible, because I want to see more unique ideas that maybe don't subscribe to the most common design tropes. And speaking of subscribe...